Vacation experiences. This past December we set off for Mozambique. Excitement aplenty as we packed the car on the evening of the 14th of December. We would leave 3 a.m. on the 15th thanks to my aunt, who never fails to make a late entry. We were only on our way at 4:10 a.m. I drove the first shift by 7 a.m. I was fighting with myself to keep my eyes open. They kept closing involuntarily, and, as luck would have it, the last time I had my eyes shut too long, I had a persistent tugging on my hair. Charlie woke me up before I got too close to the vehicle in front of us. I was suddenly wide awake. We got stuck at the border between SA and Mozambique. 4.5 hours. It was boiling hot in the vehicle and everyone was getting quite uncomfortable. I had a chance to check in with Tim before we crossed the border and our communications were cut off, and he told me Gran was with Mom, making sure she was coping. After all, she had had major surgery only a week prior to this excursion, and Charlie was in the back with us, as happy as a kid in a candy store. Our 16-hour trip eventually came to an end when we arrived at Dad's house just after 8 p.m. We were exhausted, to say the least, but we made it there in one piece. We had great days and some not so good, but that's the chances you take when you take people along for a 3-week holiday. My aunt, unfortunately, has a knack for being unhelpful and, I'm very sorry, there is no other way to put this, extremely stingy, seeing as how she is also Gran's daughter. This upset Gran, as Tim told me one night. After I had made sure to get a local starter pack and was able to communicate again, Gran really felt that she had taught my aunt to behave better. After all, she was 9 when Gran passed away. On one specific night, Gran was fed up with my aunt. I got a message from Tim and Elaine that, when my aunt went to lay down, I was to stay out of the room. It was time for Mom to give her daughter a stern talking to. At one point Tim sent me a message and said, "Listen for the closet door," and, sure enough, I heard the closet door bang shut. Gran was busy with my aunt for nearly 45 minutes. Then Tim sent me a message and told me she was done. I could go to bed if I wanted. I was wide awake, sitting in a very comfy chair, watching one of my favorite movies. Charlie had sat down on the floor in front of my feet, his back against my legs, and then Gran was sitting on the side of the chair, and she started playing with the chain around my neck. Tim told me she was fascinated with the chain. She wished she could have had something that lovely when she was alive, and that's why she keeps touching it. Earlier on this specific night, I told Tim I had something that I wanted Gran's opinion on. He told me she was walking around outside, under the carport. Now, with the high risk for malaria in Mozambique, we tended to be indoors before the sun went down, just to make sure we do not get bitten by mosquitoes, so I knew I'd have to speak to Gran through a window. She'd always hear me. I walked into the bar and closed the door behind me. When I walked up to the window, I could see the back of the trailer and my aunt's vehicle. I started to speak, and as I did, movement caught my eye. In the darkest corner, to the left of the trailer, stood a grayish figure, and the figure was looking right at me. I couldn't make out very much detail, only outlines, but I knew it was her. I finished talking and went back to my room, where I immediately sent Tim a message. "I think I just saw Gran." "Yes, and I'm not sure who was more surprised. She assumed it was your dad coming into the room, but, even in her shock, she smiled at you," came the reply from Tim. That evening she told him to tell me that she wanted me to start focusing more on hearing her. She wants to communicate with me directly. In the meanwhile, she cut herself off from both Tim and Charlie and suddenly turned to communicating through Elaine. Earlier that day, I had been in the ocean with the boys and distinctly heard a male voice calling my name twice. The best way I have to describe it is that he sounded both far away and as if he was all around me at the same time. Tim later confirmed that this was Charlie. I took to chatting with them most evenings, and I got so comfortable with Gran and Charlie around me all the time. Gran loved sitting outside under a mango tree and watching the boys play. Every time one of them fell, Tim could tell me where they were grazed, because Gran told him going to the beach was fun. My boys enjoyed the water so much it was a battle to get them in the car when it was time to go home, and Charlie was no different. One night Tim and I had gotten onto the subject of previous relationships, and Charlie decided it was time to show him the hell my ex-husband had put me through. He showed Tim things that I had tried to hide from myself: pain, terror, anguish. Charlie even knew that my ex-husband had planned to kill me. He had tried a few times, but never really saw it through, or perhaps Charlie stopped him. I'm not sure. Charlie had always kept a wood baseball bat in his car when he was alive. It had YANKY. engraved on it in silver, and Charlie told Tim that he would have loved to take that bat and use it on my ex-husband. That's how much he hates him. I remembered things that night that I had hidden from myself, frightening to remember what I survived, and liberating as well. Afterward, Charlie kept apologizing through Tim. He never meant to cause me pain. Charlie was there every day, and I never knew it. On New Year's night, I was woken up by blood-curdling screams. My mom. I rushed out of my room, and as I neared the corner to where she was, I was suddenly pushed up against the wall. Charlie, then Mom screamed again. It's a sound I never want to hear ever again. Charlie let me go, and I ran around the corner. Mom was still screaming, looking into the kitchen door, and holding my son in her arms. I immediately felt Gran radiating vicious energy, and when I asked Mom what was wrong, she told me there was someone climbing into the window. They had tried to break in. He was literally 3/4 of the way into the kitchen when Mom walked in on him. When she screamed the second time, he basically reversed and fell out of the window. Gran was in the kitchen, between Mom and that window. I have never seen my mother so scared in my life. The would-be burglars got away, but I'm convinced he got a look at a very angry ghost before he fell backwards out of the window. Every time I was sitting alone late at night, Gran and Charlie were there with me. When I got scared or anxious, my hair or my temples were stroked. When I got angry, I had hands on my shoulders holding me back. Gran told Elaine that my aunt is scared of her because she has a secret that she thought died with my Gran, and she is afraid it is going to come out. I am thinking, only time will tell.
When I sleep, am I susceptible? I am a 29-year-old male. In the past few years I have had some strange experiences when I go to sleep. I had unexplainable things happen to me since I was about 7 years old. Sometimes I have really great experiences and other times downright fearful, about 3 to 4 times a month or more or less. I am prone to feeling like something is in my room and trying to interact with me. I've never seen it until tonight. It's 12:25 a.m., about 40 minutes after my experience, and I tried to read online about what I saw to see if there was anything about it. Here I am. Now sometimes when I feel something is in my room or around, I can never see it. I just get a malevolent feeling as if something is there to try to do harm to my being in some way. It feels as if it's pushing into me, and I fight very hard to awaken. And I am filled with a feeling of fear at times. I often find it hard to fall back asleep, and it may occur 2 to 3 more times as I try to fall asleep. When this happens, I will try to sleep with the light on, but to no avail. It either will stop on its own or not. I have even had this occur during the daytime hours of the morning. Time of day does not matter, nor amount of light. This happens to me quite frequently since I was a kid. Sometimes even what's classified as night terrors occurs in me, where I have intense fear and scream and have an episode where I have no recollection of an experience, just a remembrance of intense fear. As of lately, like the last year or so, I have had good experiences similar but more intense than this. It sometimes feels as if something great. I describe it as euphoria. Not fear is trying to take a hold of me. Often at times this feeling gets so intense that I don't want to wake up, but I have to because I can't stand it. It gets more and more intense the longer it lasts. It's almost like falling down a roller coaster, in terms of the butterfly feeling in the stomach, but way more euphoric. At first it didn't last long, but I could hold the feeling, the good feeling in me, longer and longer. As it happened more frequently, I would know I was asleep at least somewhat at the time. But I'm not in deep sleep. This occurs about 20 to 30 minutes after I first try to fall asleep. Now as I got better at holding this good feeling in me, I would start to feel energy radiating from my hands and arms. Vibration, if you will. It feels very powerful. Like I could shoot lightning or move mountains with my hands. Well, tonight I got that feeling and I was able to open my eyes while experiencing this. I saw waves around my hands, and as I breathed it went past the waves. It looked like smoke. A stream of it billowing out from my mouth, like mist. And it looked like heat waves from my hands, like how heat bends light waves. And I was able to see my mirror across from my bed, and I saw a dark figure in my room. Couldn't see the face, but it was hooded. This led to intense fear. I mean, I could see my TV on, my hands shaking and vibrating. Before this, waves and smoke, missed everything. Then the figure in my mirror. Then I got scared and tried to awaken or snap out of it. Whatever you want to say. I'm partially crying writing this. This isn't a dream, this is an experience I can recall vividly and accurately, and it fits the MO of everything strange that happens to me at night. I know it's not a ghost in my house. This happens to me in lots of places I have slept. But this is the first time I have seen the figure. I know I'm not crazy. I'm very in control of myself and my life. But I feel when I am asleep maybe I am more vulnerable or able to be influenced somehow by something. I would love some input because the other stuff I can dismiss as sleep paralysis or brainwave crap that happens in the first 30 minutes of sleep. But now it just got a whole lot real. My eyes were open this time I witnessed it all.
Why won't you leave me alone to tell this story? I need to give a little background. I know that we really are not supposed to talk about dreams on this forum. However, I believe it is an important part to understanding my experience fully. I was 16 and I had just met my high school sweetheart, Zach. We became very close and realized we had a connection that was on a level different from anyone I had dated in the past. We seemed to understand each other fully and have some sort of special spiritual connection. The night before I was supposed to go to Zach's house for dinner and meet his parents for the first time, I had a very vivid dream of my death. I won't go into detail about the death part of my dream as much as what happened after I found myself in a strange home. Everything was a light blue color and very peaceful. I realize I am standing in front of Zach asleep in his bed, and I had this overwhelming feeling to say goodbye. Suddenly, I am transported to his living room where I am surrounded by shadow figures, all of which are the same shade of light blue color I experienced earlier the next day after I told Zach about my dream in detail, how the house looked, how he was asleep on his bed. He became very distraught, stating that he woke up in the position I stated in my dream, and basically I gave him description of the layout of his house. I feel now that I can continue my story and that you will have a better understanding. One afternoon, Zach, Dawn, and I were just goofing off in Zach's living room. We all were talking about the paranormal and just being silly. As we were talking, I heard my name whispered. I looked at my friends and asked them to stop messing with me. They both said that they didn't say anything. I just blew it off, and we continued to talk and goof off. Shortly thereafter, I heard it again and felt this strong pull to the attic. Zach's bedroom was in the attic. They lived in an old house where the attic was actually used as a bedroom. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just my imagination. However, it just became more instant, so I quietly got up and headed upstairs. As I was climbing the stairs to the attic, there was a strange scratching noise coming from within the crawl space, almost like there were animals in the walls. When I reached the top of the stairs, I turned the corner to face into Zach's bedroom. When I froze, I still don't know what happened to this day. I just couldn't move. It was dark in the room, but there was enough outside light for me to make out items in the room. I looked toward the bed when the room became very warm and humid. The darkness began to spread and suddenly was coming toward me. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. All of a sudden there was this intense heat as something came at me. I felt it push past me, knocking me backwards. Once I gained my ground, the next thing I remember was shouting, "Why don't you leave me alone? I don't want you here anymore." I then remember stumbling down the stairs and coming to a stop just before the door. Again, my name was whispered. I looked up toward the ceiling and noticed blackness like no other, and it seemed to creep along the ceiling and down the wall toward me. I felt completely paralyzed. I don't even remember breathing. The next thing I remember was Zach and Dawn pulling me from the stair into their arms. I was so scared all I could do was cry. They just held me for a while, and then we de-iced to leave. A couple of days later, we were sitting at school waiting for class when I asked them what happened. After I came down the stairs, Dawn told me they heard me scream and came running. They saw me at the top of the stairs and they couldn't get to me. She said there was some sort of barrier blocking them from going up the stairs to me, so they watched in horror as I stumbled down the stairs. Zach told me that once I came to a stop at the bottom of the stairs, I just kind of zoned out and was staring at the ceiling. He also told me that I didn't blink and that my eyes had a green glow to them. I am not entirely sure what happened that day, or if the dream I had is connected in any way. I was hoping that someone would be able to give me some insight. The motorbike light, it must have been the summer of '81, when Nikki, our eldest daughter, started pestering us to go to a disco. The answer was no. Definitely not. You are far too young. Over the next few weeks, she wheedled and cajoled, begged, pleaded, and threatened. Eventually, her dad and I came to an agreement with her. Dad said, "Okay, on one condition, Mom goes with you." Nikki's little heart was filled with joy, and news was quickly spread around the class at school. Before I knew it, I was chaperoning a car full of young teenagers. Oh my goodness! What had I let myself in for? I had just become Mom's taxi. Thus began our Friday nights out. Dad stayed at home, very obligingly, to look after our two younger girls. I must add, at this point, that our daughters had a whole host of friends. Buzz bikes were all the rage, and most of the boys were riding these 50 cubic centimeters vehicles. Most of the girls could only dream of riding them, although Angel, our youngest daughter, attempted to ride one across our front lawn. She popped a wheelie before crashing into our precast wall. Luckily, with no damage to herself or the wall, the bike sustained serious scratches. When Friday nights came around, I had to seek out my slinkiest jeans and a suitable foxy top, just so that I could blend in with the crowd. I didn't want to look like a chaperone, nor spoil their fun. I must admit, though, I had lots of fun myself. Much to Nikki's disgust, lots of high school boys asked me to dance too. One Friday night, the station wagon filled to capacity. We set out for the disco to have a jolt. As we got to the Big T junction, Nikki, in the front seat with me, shouted, "Mom, there goes Coney." I followed her pointing finger to see a young man on a buzz bike was passed, doing about 40 kilometers an hour. "Quick, Mom, follow him, he is going in the wrong direction." So, I obediently turned right to follow said motor vehicle. Not a problem, I thought, not at that speed. So, off we set, in hot pursuit. What would we do with that noisy contraption when we caught it? With the gang of kids in the back, urging me to greater speed, I diligently followed as slow as that bike was going. I could not seem to lessen the distance between us. Soon the last of the street lights dwindled behind us. We were entering an area of small holdings. Now, I was reduced to following a small red tail light with the kids behind me, literally breathing down my neck. I followed that little red light, like my life depended on it. The whole wagonload of girls, cheering, whooping and shrieking as they egged me onward. Suddenly, the red light made a right turn. I hung a right too. I soon found that we were now traveling down a dirt road with a middle managey. Long summer grass brushed the wagon on either side. We bumped on and on, seemingly for ages. Then, right before our eyes, the light vanished. Gone. Poof. Just like that. No turning or swerving. Just gone. I stopped the wagon where we thought the light had disappeared. We all got out, and by the light from the headlights, searched the sides of the road for signs of a rider. A bike. A turn-off. Nothing. Not even a bent blade of grass could we find. We eventually all piled back into the vehicle, feeling very disappointed at not catching our quarry. We went on to the disco that night, but the fizz had gone out of the champagne. Coney never rolled up later, as Nikki and Co. were hoping to tell you the absolute truth. I don't remember ever seeing Coney again. Things that stuck with me just registered after digging a little deeper into some phenomena that I've experienced. I found out others have had the same things going on. That's why I want to share with you some things I experienced in my life. Now, the reason they stuck with me and I can still remember them is because, well, they were so real. You know about these times when you think you remember something correctly, but aren't exactly sure? Now those are the times that you were probably wrong, but up to this day I still remember them clearly and can say without a doubt that I wasn't imagining anything, wasn't on drugs, wasn't sleeping. Basically I was there 100%. Well, here it goes. Nothing extreme or anything, but still unexplainable and therefore interesting. Hope you guys could give some kind of feedback, no matter what. I live in the Netherlands, and am 25 years old of current. Most of my youth I spent in my parents' house, in a small town in the south of the Netherlands. It's actually a pretty big and old house, dating back to the 1930s, with creepy creaking floors and dark storage rooms all included. I have always had a lively imagination, especially as a child. But still I was completely able to separate fiction from reality in my life. I have never had any truly impacting paranormal experiences, nor have I ever shown a true interest for it either in and around the house. However, there were several places where I always felt something, a feeling as if one were looked at, so to say, a pressure in the back, as if eyes were looking at you, and something was following, that made me not wanting to stay there at all. Imagination, perhaps. Yet I remember always fleeing down the stair when I had to go down from the upstairs lobby. Perhaps I was making myself crazy, but the feeling was undeniably there. Almost always, and it didn't feel good at all. Anyway, from age 5 up to 20, I slept in the same bedroom. It was upstairs and pretty big. I remember one day, in the weekend, when I was about 10 I think, that I woke up as normal. At about 10 a.m. as always, I would lie about lingering in bed a little longer, awake but still enjoying the night's comfort. I remember then that I heard the sound of breathing. It was undeniably breathing now. I knew my dad sometimes used to snore so loud even the neighbors could hear it, but now he didn't, and this was not snoring. It seemed to come from around the floor to the left beneath my head. Afraid as I was, I didn't dare to look, and lay still in fear, even holding my own breath to make sure it wasn't just me hyperventilating. It was the sound of exhaling, sighing like, and sounded older than me, and male. I remember it going on only for about 20 seconds, after which I ran to my parents' bedroom, my mother comforting me and telling me it was just me breathing. I knew it wasn't me. I still know how convinced I was, and seeing as how I held my own breath and still heard it, I still am to this day. It never happened to me again after that, but I still remember it vividly. A very strange thing indeed. The second thing, to me at least, was more disturbing. This happened about 6 years ago. I guess I can't give you guys the exact time and date, but I was about 18 or 19, something like that. I remember just going to bed, as I always did, nothing special. Then, I woke up, or at least so I thought. This might sound a little strange, and is hard to put into words, but let me try my best. I dreamt that I woke up, in my room, but then I must have faded back into sleep again, for I saw a can of soda right in front of me, big, and it was the only thing in front of me. It then bent at the middle, like it bent over me. I then shook and was again awakened. This time, I saw my room as it was, dark, but as it really was. I felt very much awake, and I think I really was this time. As I said, the room was dark, as it was at night, but there was something bending over me, like that can of soda in my dream. The room was dark, but this was darker. The figure of a man, a shadow as so to say, was standing over me, looking at me. I could only see his figure, because he was darker than my room, darker than black, almost. I do not remember what happened next. I think I again fell asleep after a few minutes, but I clearly remembered it when I was awake, because I remember it to this day. As I said, I never had any real extreme things happen to me in my life, but these accounts were things I just had to share one day, and I hope you enjoyed.